the workshop session of the College Park Mayor and City Council. I'm Mayor Bianca Motley Broom. It is 6:05 p.m. All council members are present. I apologize. We are experiencing some technical difficulty, so you can't see me on the screen, but I am here and we are ready to move forward. So the first and only item on the agenda is a presentation by Peachtree Government Relations for the 2021 Georgia legislative session and consideration of legislative priorities for the upcoming session. So I think I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Bolia and company.
Sir, you're unmuted.
He's on the 9909.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just unmuted it. He's
okay,
got.
And the other one is 404-384-9490.
Thank you. You've both been unmuted.
All right, Don.
Hey guys, this is Howard Franklin, colleague of Don's. I believe he is on, but he probably is having some technical difficulties too. I know I had my fair share. Don, can you hear us, or can you send me a text if you have any issues?
Okay, both of you are unmuted.
And there should be one other. I think Matt Ramsey, you're also on as well, right?
I'm on, yes.
We definitely want to try to get Don on here, but I know in the interest of the citizens' time, we don't want this to drag on. I think we can certainly get this thing kicked off and try to figure out how to get Don on here. And Don, if you're listening, just make sure you hit *6 to also unmute yourself beyond your cell phone actually unmuting.
I mean, I'm connected right now.
Yeah, Mike, can you put him on the regular screen? I got him on the cell phone.
No, because he dialed in.
Okay, Mr. Franklin. Okay, gentlemen, Mr. Franklin, are you able to sort of take the lead on this so we can get moving?
Yeah, no problem at all. We can actually move to the next slide. So just to give you guys a quick update, we're here to talk about the upcoming 2021 legislative session. The slide page you guys saw before just lists the different organizations that represent the city of College Park before the General Assembly. And so thank you for bringing it back. So a number of us are on this evening. Sorry you can't see us all, but we will all be working on your behalf at the Georgia General Assembly come Monday, and obviously for the time leading up into that period. And so we've actually got a number of issues that we think are of utmost importance, both to the legislative body that is the City of College Park City Council, as well as to the citizens. And we really just want to go through a number of those here tonight to both give you an update and to solicit your input before we go into the General Assembly on Monday. So next slide. So the most is probably something that our colleague Matt Ramsey can talk most specifically about. So Matt, I'll turn this one over to you.
Sure, and I think Don's going to probably have the most recent information on the most tax. It is my understanding that that Don has had a discussion as recently as last week with Chuck Martin, who is a longtime member of the House Ways and Means Committee. Obviously, there's going to be new leadership at the House Ways and Means Committee. Chairman Martin is going to certainly have a leadership role, and I believe Don has the sense that for the first time there's potentially a crack that provides some real positive momentum for most. There are a variety of cities in North Fulton interested in participating and seeing if there's a way to cobble together a coalition here and move forward. certainly would provide provide a lot of flexibility. Of course, it plays into the discussion around T-SPLOS as well, in terms of which way the committee is going to have a willingness to move forward and which way the city and county is going to be willing to move forward. I think once Don's able to get on the call, he's going to be able to provide a good bit more insight on his discussions, and probably will be able to shed a little bit more light on kind of the current state of affairs with respect to most in College Park.
Yeah, this is Howard again. I'll just jump in to say that we know that the municipal option sales tax is the highest priority for the city of College Park. We do think that there are some promising signs of a regional cooperation and also engaging North Fulton cities, which hadn't been at the table before. So we will absolutely press this issue, and hopefully when Mr. Boley is able to join us, he can share some of the more up-to-date information he's been able to obtain from members of the General Assembly. Also worth noting, after November 3rd election, part of the reason that we think that there's more daylight for this particular issue is that a number of the folks who had been standing in our way or had a principal opposition to the municipal option sales tax for the South Fulton cities were not successful in their reelection. So we're going to see at the start of the session some new leadership taking over some of the committees that are most important to advancing this legislative priority.
Don's on 4844 now.
Okay, I'm allowing him to talk. He just needs to. I've unmuted him, so should be able to talk.
Don, are you there? If not, we'll just keep moving on, and I'm sure we'll figure out this technical difficulty.
Can I ask a question at this point, or do you want to wait to the end?
I'll defer to the mayor about how exactly we want to manage
Go ahead, Councilman Clay.
You made the comment that we will have a better chance with most because of change in some of the participants. And you said that the opposition to it on the South, is there any, outside of personal preference, is there any rational basis for the opposition to having it the most?
Matt, you want to take that one?
I don't know that I would want to try to speak to the rationality of opposition. Certainly, we don't believe so. We believe it would be a useful tool in the toolbox, and it ultimately is an issue of local control and putting it in the hands of the duly elected leaders of College Park and its citizenry. And that's certainly our message. I think historically there's been some leadership on the Ways and Means Committee that is perhaps no longer on the committee, that would say they were attempting to maintain flexibility at the state level to preserve the tax base, and weren't interested in proliferation of additional local option, municipal option sales tax. We believe some of that resistance in terms of leaderships that have lost or retired has abated to a degree, which is what gives us some optimism that we've got a potential path forward this year.
Well, that makes sense. Different people have different philosophy of how you ought to distribute the taxation. So, okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions regarding the most before we move on? Councilman Gay, I think you do have a question, but you're muted.
Is Councilman Allen aware the most tax revenue, where it's coming from? Councilman Allen, are you aware where it's what it? Because I wasn't when I came on council.
Coming from Clayton County over at the airport.
See, can you all give him the councilman an update on where that revenue is coming from? It's sewer tax, isn't it, Councilman Ambrose?
Tax from the sewers?
Most stands for municipal option sales tax.
This is not the sewer tax we're talking about.
This is not the tax from the sewer? See, I'm confused. No. So maybe you should explain it to me then. Where's it coming from?
Mr. Franklin, you want to?
Yeah, so in short, what we were proposing and what we've been long after the city of College Park, as well as some of your neighbors that also link up to the airport, are looking to increase or create a municipal option sales tax that would essentially allow us to assess an additional percentage of a penny that you collect and spend on underground infrastructure. And the way we proposed it, at least in the last two last two legislative cycles, was to actually do it in concert with the cities of Hateville and East Point in South Metro or in South Fulton County. So this is a separate tax focused on underground infrastructure, in particular around water and sewer. So not something that's currently on the books, and not.
Okay,
and I
so
don't
this
believe
is
it has
a
to.
sewer. This is the sewer tax then we're talking about here.
So this
Yes,
is
the
Don Boley. I think I'm finally.
Proceeds would go for
Go
that.
ahead.
Yes.
Yeah,
because
this is where Atlanta is able to have the tax, and we contribute to the flow into the sewer system that makes it eligible.
exactly our mileage of sewer of pipe is essentially counted into the length that allowed Atlanta to get a most in the first place. And
The
so
flow, yeah. Right.
Number of gallons.
The number of gallons.
So what we're trying to do, since we have some of the same issues, is allow for a referendum to take place on this particular issue. We've not been able to make that happen yet, but it looks like this year might, because the players have changed, some of the circumstances have changed. It looks like we might have the opportunity to get it on the ballot in the fall.
And this is Don Boley. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but one little nuance I would like to mention. In my discussions with some of the other mayors in North Fulton, I think in particular to how they would structure this most tax. And the one really nice thing about, and there's many nice things, but one thing that's nice about the most tax is it's very flexible. The way the Atlanta did their legislation, it did dictate how the money would be spent and what types of projects, but we can expand that. So we can build out a most tax that I think some of the other cities in North Fulton are interested in, that you could use it for other things outside of water and sewer projects if you so chose to do so. So what's nice about a most tax is that while Atlanta used it to fix their water sewer infrastructure, we have some flexibility that would allow us to widen that scope to include other infrastructure projects.
Any questions?
No, like that.
All right. Next issue.
I don't know if you want to go to the next slide. And Graham may have some context on this, and as well as Matt Ramsey. As you all know, House Bill 779 from the 2020 session re-engineered the split on the TAVT tax or tax on motor vehicles, and it made it a much more favorable split to cities versus counties. And we are very protective of any changes. We want to continue to be protective of any changes. We do understand that the way they taxed leased vehicles may be looked at in the 2021 session. I think some of the dealerships are interested in re-engineering that, and so we're going to be watching that very carefully. This is one of those taxes where I think they're sort of treating it like a bit of a dartboard. They keep throwing the darts in, and then it doesn't quite come out with the mathematical formula they think it's going to come out with, and it favors a county over the city or a school board, and so they keep changing it every year to make very slight changes. So what we found is that sometimes what the budget office predicts will happen to cities and counties as far as the way the monies will go, it doesn't always happen, and so they keep re-engineering and keep tweaking the numbers. So we're going to watch this legislation very, very closely and make sure that if they do tweak it, the cities are left harmless. But my understanding is, based on the 2020 bill that passed this year, it's a much more favorable split, and the revenues are better than what we had from the previous model. Any questions on that particular slide? Okay. This is a bill that we've talked about a lot. I think it's coming back. You see the Home Builders Association, along with the vinyl siding industry in particular, pushing it. What they want to do is they want to preempt local governments from making design standards. So when you guys are looking at how you want to create design standards on whether it's residential or commercial developments, this bill would preempt you from doing it. It would use a set of standards created at the state level, which quite frankly are sort of the lowest common denominator. The City of College Park, along with GMA and ACCG, opposed this legislation in 2020. We expect it to come back in 2021. And assuming nothing's changed, we assume that you all will continue to oppose this legislation.
Do you think the likelihood of it passing is higher or lower than in 2020?
I think lower. I think they're, they try to frame it as a affordable housing measure, that cities were creating design standards that were making it very unaffordable. But the reality is that when you look at things like whether you require brick or hardy plank or aluminum side or vinyl siding, those represent such a small percentage of the cost of the structure. Most of it is in the dirt. It's going to be in a lot of other pieces. So design standards, at the end of the day, their argument didn't hold up, that somehow it was raising the cost of housing. So I think their numbers are not there. It wasn't there certainly before. We don't expect it to be there in this year.
All right. Any other questions? All right.
I'll throw this one up to Howard. Yep.
Yeah, I will take short-term rentals just because I've been a part of watching this bill and numerous bills around this issue or this industry unfold for quite a while. As you guys are aware, there's really been a lot of energy pulling in opposite directions around short-term rentals. The bill that we were concerned about, I think it's Senate Bill 162, actually would have preempted local jurisdictions from making any rules that would preclude short-term rentals in their respective communities. Actually, the General Assembly seems to have gone in the opposite direction in the last year or two. As a part of the Marketplace Facilitator Bill, House Bill 448 actually, and as you guys are all aware, the Marketplace Facilitator Bill actually taxes digital downloads. There was a companion piece of legislation, House Bill 448, which would have subjected a similar tax to the short-term rental platforms like Airbnb or VRBO or HomeAway. And for whatever reason, it did not pass in the final days of the General Assembly. So I know there will be effort afoot to try to finally nip this issue in the bud and to come up with a regulatory structure for taxation for short-term rentals all across the state. I think one of the other reasons that we are unlikely to see any legislation that would preempt cities from making their own rulemaking on short-term rentals is because large cities that happen to be tourism hubs have finally stepped up to the plate and have done so on their own. You guys are aware that Savannah and Augusta have STR local policies or ordinances, and the city of Atlanta currently has an SDR policy in its committee structure for Atlanta City Council. And I spoke to both of the authors of that legislation. It looks like the mayor has no opposition and it's likely to go through by late February, early March. So I think once we get some of the larger cities across the state of Georgia that have a really strong tourism bent to have their own strong SDR policies in place, we'll really see a lot of this go away. Of course, you know, as I mentioned, there are a number of national or international groups that are advocating for this preemption. You guys probably also saw that Airbnb just filed for a very successful IPO. So it's gone on to the public markets, and we'll see whether or not they continue to push for this, but it looks like there's not a whole lot of interest in pushing this at the General Assembly this year.
So,
any questions?
Yes. So it sounds to me like you're saying that there is going to be a common regulation of short-term rentals throughout the state coming. Is that statement correct?
No, apologies, Councilmember Ambrose, if I misspoke. I think that there is an appetite for a taxation structure that will be common, but on the regulation side, in terms of how STRs can operate, how many you can own and operate, what the local fees are to register, I don't believe there's going to be any statewide attempt there. I think the only real interest that the state legislature has consistently shown is being able to collect some remuneration for allowing STRs to operate in the state.
Okay, so taxation would be the driving factor, but what if you wanted to simply ban short-term rentals, which is our position now? We have any number of illegal short-term rentals throughout the city, which are not regulated because they're not supposed to exist, and potentially some of them are hazardous for the people that stay there. But
the legislation on the state level would preempt us from being able to do that, to prohibit short-term rentals, which is why
that's
right. I mean, I think both GMA and our folks have been pushing against essentially it's stripping us of local control.
Exactly.
I think the conversation about short-term rentals is one we need to have again, but it's one that we need to have on the city level as opposed to legislation from the state that says that there are certain things that we just cannot do on the local level. Because I think that College Park is very different from Savannah or Valdosta or Blue Ridge. We need to be able to determine what's best for us. But if it's losing steam, I think that's a good thing.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
I just want to make sure we're not trading off. Okay, you can make your own regulations with regard to I don't know how many safety checks they have to have a year, et cetera, but you cannot exclude them. And the reason I emphasize that is College Park has an incredibly high percentage of rentals, especially if you count the people in the multifamily complexes. People who rent, for the most part, don't have a stake in the city. They don't vote. They don't necessarily take care of their property if the owner doesn't take care of it. And many of these are being bought by investment firms who will have a number of short-term rentals. So if we want to maintain the quality of the neighborhoods, if we want to maintain a citizenry that participates in government, then short-term rentals tend to detract from that. And where I'm trying to go is say, I am very opposed, and I know a number of my constituents aren't happy to hear me say that, but I am very opposed to short-term rentals. And I would not want to see legislation passed that would preclude our opportunity to not have short-term rentals.
Councilmember Ambrose, again, I'll just say we're trending in a direction where that legislation looks less and less likely to even be considered by the General Assembly. And the note I would offer is that the more major jurisdictions write their own short-term rental regulations or even preclude them locally, the more ammunition we have at the state level to make sure that the General Assembly doesn't revisit that discussion or that decision.
Well, all they'd have to do is just say, you can do anything else as far as regulating them, but you can't exclude them. That's the key decision at the state level. If they said, oh, you've got total control, except you've got to allow them. Because once you have to allow them, if you allow them wholesale, then you darn well better regulate them. Just for the good of the people that stay there, if nothing else. That's my
No,
opinion.
we appreciate the comments, and we will be vigilant and sure to keep you abreast of any changes that might transpire in 2021. You guys, any other questions, or you want to go to the next slide?
So you can go ahead and move ahead.
This is legislation that. Go ahead, Matt.
You want me to? Yeah, I can take this one, Don.
That'd be great.
And this is a pretty quick discussion. As you guys know from the signs and disclaimers, I'm sure you have on your city property that provides the statutory liability language pertaining to COVID. There was a rebuttable presumption put into state law last year that extends until July 14th, 2021. If you put certain notices and disclaimers at certain points of entry on both public and private property, it creates a heightened liability shield for the property owner. It puts visitors on notice that they're visiting at their own risk, and that if there's a contraction of COVID, unless the property owner is grossly negligent or engages in willful and wanton misconduct, they're shielded from liability. We would anticipate that that's going to be extended. It sunsets July 14th, 2021. I just PSA, continue to work with your city attorney to make sure your notices are in the right places. I would anticipate this is going to get extended at least to the end of the year based on where we are from a COVID standpoint, the numbers standpoint in the state. There's certainly interest across the spectrum from both public and private property interests. And we'll certainly keep you posted. And if there's any feedback you get from the citizenry on just the nature of those notices, please provide that to us.
Is there any discussion as to what constitutes gross negligence?
Well, I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to give you a lawyer answer. That is every single factual situation will be different. So it's that's something that's typically, if it goes to the end, it's typically in the eyes of the jury or the judge, the finder of fact and the finder of law. But I will say, gross negligence is a very, very high bar to clear for a litigant bringing an action against a party. Simple negligence is it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question. So basically,
yes.
if it's only gross negligence, you can pretty much get away with almost anything. Can you get away with, let's say there's a general order that says you cannot have more than 50 people in a particular bar, or 30 people, depending on the square footage or what have you. If a business were to continually violate that, would that, in your opinion, be gross negligence?
That extends beyond the scope of the legislation, and it really would depend on the way a regulation is put in place, whether depending on what the way the state legislation is drafted and the congregation limits, and to what degree the property owner was on notice that they were in violation of the statutory prohibition on the gathering. I'd be reticent to try to give you a legal opinion on that on the call. And I know you guys have got really good city attorneys that can probably provide some guidance on that. I think suffice it to say, though, the scope of this legislation, the COVID liability protection, is really just geared towards protecting property owners that are being prudent, and that they don't get caught up in superfluous litigation, including the city of College Park, because municipal property is covered by the COVID liability protection.
Well, right. Well, obviously, we want to protect our businesses, and we want to protect ourselves. That's just good common sense. But what I worry about is the fact that if rules are passed, laws are passed as to what is required according to CDC guidelines or whatever you base them on, and they're violated, one would think that there are bars. I've read numerous newspaper articles and newscasts, listened to newscasts where they have super spreader events in violation of the law. And I would think that would be gross negligence. I think it should be. And if it doesn't come under that classification, if it's not tied to the law in some way, my concern is that somehow it ought to be tied to the law as well.
Well, there certainly is I'm sure there's a pattern of willful disregard of regulations on gathering places where you would certainly tread out of the world of ordinary negligence and cross the line into gross negligence and even willful and wanton misconduct.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, next slide.
This is Howard. I'll take this one. As you guys are all very well aware, Clayton County took the lead in the previous legislative session at basically repealing an exemption from the ad valorem tax for Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. And while that bill didn't go very far in the legislative process, the county Clayton County sees fit to revisit it in the 2021 legislative session. I know that we had a number of conversations with city staff and the mayor just to keep you guys abreast of how that legislation was unfolding, what the political prospects were for its passage, and it did not appear likely to pass in 2020. And so for that reason, we avoided taking an official position on House Bill 504, along with a number of other bills that were filed that had the same intent. We're going to be watching really closely in 2021 what happens with the refiling of that bill. I talked with Representative Berno, who is also the Clayton County chairwoman for the delegation, and she communicated that they are planning to refile that bill. They do believe that some of the changes to the makeup of the General Assembly, as well as some of the folks they've been able to recruit to their aid in this legislation, will help move it forward further than it had gone in the previous session. It's important to note that there are a number of jurisdictions that could benefit from a piece of legislation like this one. Obviously, the city of College Park, because it shares some of its land with Hartsfield-Jackson and Clayton County and some other cities that are also adjacent to the airport. So this is something that we'll be watching really closely. As you guys are also aware, there are a number of other pieces of legislation, namely around a potential takeover of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport that I think do have some standing in this conversation. We'll be watching this one really closely, and certainly if we find the appropriate opportunity for the city of College Park to weigh in on Clayton County's priority, we'll certainly make those introductions and make sure that we're at the table for that. But I know this is something that's, again, a long-standing priority for the city of College Park and a number of other jurisdictions that are adjacent to the airport. So it's something we've definitely put at the top of our list for 2021. But happy to answer any questions about this bill or its successors for the 2021 session.
I have a quick question. I just want to understand I'm reading it correctly. It means that Clayton County or the properties that College Park own in Clayton County would have to pay taxes or don't have to pay tax?
It would actually the reverse. So that the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport is exempted from paying its ad valorem taxes, even though the body or the footprint of the airport extends beyond multiple jurisdictions. So what it would do, it would take away the exemption and require Hartsfield-Jackson to actually pay the taxes it's otherwise collecting from patrons, from visitors, and travelers to the jurisdictions where those parts of the airport actually sit.
And what
so
tax
for us to be
is
revenue
that?
positive.
Is that property tax or occupational tax? What tax
I believe
is
we're
that?
talking about property tax here.
Property tax. Okay.
Any other questions? We can move on to transportation on the next slide.
Great, thank you. So I'll talk a little bit about this, and Howard and anyone in the group may want to jump in, but we've talked about this generally. One transportation issue we're working on right now with Jackson is dealing with the bridge widening, some dollars. I know, Jackson, do you want to comment on that? And we can kind of talk about what we're doing.
Buffington Road, Buffington Road has been, since 2017, it's been on the books with Georgia DOT to widen Buffington Road and redo the bridge out there. And as the Natural Fresh is being expanded, we've got a couple of new warehouses one warehouse has been completed and two more additional warehouses are going in out there. Going to create more truck traffic. But on another note, the Lincoln property, they call it the Lincoln property, that Chick-fil-A is putting $28 million in remodeling one of those buildings out there to do a manufacturing plant. And there's just so many things that area is expanding on, and Georgia DOT keeps telling me that they're short on money. And I wanted to have us talking to Dawn about having another meeting with Georgia DOT to see if they could find some fundings to move this project along, because it was supposed to be completed by this year, 2020, not 2021. And that's what they needed. And then I've been talking to the city of Atlanta. That line's dead end, so we need to get the line extended so they have fire protection out there. So there's a lot of issues in that area that we need to address. But it's not we can do anything, it's city of Atlanta and Georgia DOT needs to address. But we need to help those.
So we are in the process of setting up some meetings with GDOT. We hope to have those on the books in the next several weeks. And as soon as we do, we can report back any progress or any answers we might be able to get from GDOT directly.
I have a question. Roosevelt Highway, now Main, has the exact same challenge. It needs to be widened, particularly if we're going to start putting warehouses on Main. And that's something I've asked that we talked to GDOT about as well.
The last time I talked to GDOT, they do have the Washington Road intersection, but they're trying to get around the railroad. The railroad's got a big chunk of property down there that they're trying to widen through the Washington Road in 29.
I'm saying
they overlap.
I understand, Jason, about the turnaround. I said from Washington to up by GICC, that portion needs to be widened, at least the Global Gateway. It's a single line. It's only a 2-lane highway.
We have huge backups there. What Councilman Gay is saying is correct. We have huge backups there, and the road definitely needs to be widened. And at one point, it wasn't even included in the long-range transportation plans a year or so ago. And we need to make that happen.
Yeah, Amazon's putting a lot of trucks there.
We're certainly glad to work with Jackson and his team to talk about that. There's probably a process that we probably need to discuss. But Jackson, I don't know, we haven't talked too much about that project, but we can certainly dig into it as we move forward with the other ones.
We will. Now it's been brought to our attention again.
All right, next.
We've talked about this in the past and wanted to conclude this slide again. You know, as you know, COVID has really been very difficult, in particular for cities like College Park that had such reliance on tourism and other types of things that generate a lot of the economic development dollars. So certainly, as we continue to work with your team on how we can bridge those gaps, and hopefully the vaccine becomes readily available, and the various sites that you have, the airport traffic and all those great things that we hope will come in the very near future happen. But we want to let you know that we're thinking about these things. We are talking to your staff on a regular basis about those things, in particular about the OZ expansion. So I don't know, Jackson, if you want to jump in, or if anyone from your team wants to talk about some of the projects we're working on. Are you talking about 6 West? Well, I think we were talking about, we've talked about trying to either work with your federal team to get other dollars in there.
Oh, yeah,
any
from the
potential
okay.
federal monies.
Yes, we've been trying to work with them to get us, instead of giving it when it goes to the state, to give it right to the city and not to go to the counties.
So, but in general, we just want to let you know we're thinking about this topic. It's important. We know it's important, and certainly we'll be working with the mayor and staff to work on these various projects. Didn't know if there was anything else in particular that were important to you as you look at this slide, but those bullet points we have up were the ones that we're focusing on. I wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything.
I wish I had access to these slides prior to the meeting. These were not in our packet. These were, unless I got a different packet than everyone else, these were not in the packet. There were some nice slides in there about the political situation, but there was nothing on what you've just covered here. That'd be helpful in the future.
Absolutely, we can make sure that happens.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a comment. Could you all reach out, at least I recommend rather that you reach out to our newly elected state senators and make them aware of what our legislative priorities are? I think we have a new one or two, at least one. Don't we have one new state senator? Senator
Absolutely.
Halpern has replaced now Congresswoman Williams. So I have been in touch with her, and she and I actually we were discussing an opportunity to sit down and talk about the legislative priorities.
We've done the same on your behalf during biennial, which is where all the new state lawmakers take to Athens, Georgia for 3 days to learn about the process of actually becoming a state lawmaker. We took her to dinner. We talked a bit about her priorities in the General Assembly, and like most of the freshmen, they're looking to learn and figure out exactly what issues they want to tackle. But we'll certainly tag team with the mayor and make sure we stay in front of all of your members of your delegation, especially the new ones.
Is there a
and I would like to add that.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Is there a Wild Hog supper, or is it going to be canceled?
I believe it's last year it was on. This year, I believe they're going virtual. They're still raising money for the Atlanta Community Food Bank, but it will not be a physical event at the Georgia Train Depot like we've had for many a year prior.
And we're going to be playing it by ear. I think they're setting up the Capitol as far as non-legislators and outside visitors the way they did during the June portion of the session, where they're going to limit how many people can enter the building. My understanding is that they're going to go with the Georgia Tech saliva test. Every legislator, every staffer are going to have to get 2 tests a week, at the beginning of the week and the end of the week. And we understand they're going to obviously require masks to enter the Capitol, require masks while you're there, and also limit access. So I think last year one of the things we did very well was to have a delegation meeting with the College Park delegation. Mayor Broom brought in some citizens that had a chance to meet their legislators and talk about issues. I thought it was a really, really important event. We don't know if we can do those kinds of things this year, and unfortunately, we're going to have to play some of that by ear. If we are able to do it, if it makes sense, if it can be done safely, we certainly are willing to do that and pull that together. But unfortunately, I can't give you a definitive answer on if those types of things are going to be allowed this year. So we'll wait and see. We hope to have some good news for you as far as that front goes. But if we are able to pull off a College Park Day at the Capitol, we certainly will be letting everyone know.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, was that your last slide? No, it's not. Okay.
Just continue to work. I want to just give all of you guys kudos for the great work you did. As you know, when Fulton County first were allotted $104 million, there was almost no money, in fact, no money allocated to the cities. I don't think that would have been turned around, but for the effort of the mayor, of everyone on council that made their calls, that put pressure on on the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. I think also putting pressure on legislators, who then put pressure on Fulton County commissioners. And it was a significant number that College Park ended up getting, and that would have been absolutely zero. So I think just continuing to coordinate with the cities in Fulton County, and certainly with the Fulton County Board of Commissioners is very critical. And Mayor Broom, you may have some specific things you want to mention about that.
Well, we are meeting with the commissioners on a monthly basis now. In fact, that meeting is this Friday. And as a South Fulton region, we have been really upping the communication amongst the mayors. And I think that has been very beneficial for the entire area, because certainly this past year has shown us that when we coordinate together, that we can certainly get things done. And if we act as a region and in turn cooperate with our North Fulton counterparts, we can move mountains sometimes. So certainly look forward to continuing that and building on it in 2021.
Thank you all again for giving us the chance to visit with you all. I think we've got a great team representing you all again for the 2021 session. Glad to be available. This slide has all our cell phone numbers and email, so feel free to contact us directly. We're glad to visit with you at any time.
Can we get a copy of that slide?
That's exactly where I was
Absolutely.
going.
Yes, sir.
Like I say, we
I'll send
we didn't get any of this information in the packet.
I'll get you.
We got the information this afternoon, so I'll get it emailed out to you all.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Any other
Thank you,
business to
guys.
handle in workshop? All right, hearing none, and we've got some more business to discuss in executive session. I'll take a motion to return to executive session for the purposes of real estate, litigation, and personnel.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Councilman Allen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. I will see you at the executive session link shortly. Thank you.